Welcome back to TLDR's daily briefing for Wednesday, the 16th of April, 2025. In today's episode, we cover calls for an Israeli deal with Hamas, China's surprising economic growth, and the former Peruvian president's corruption conviction. But first, France-Algeria relations collapse. A major diplomatic row between France and Algeria continues to escalate, with France recalling its ambassador from Algeria and ordering 12 Algerian diplomats to leave Paris. The retaliatory move comes after Algeria earlier this week expelled 12 French officials, which itself came in response to the arrest by French authorities of an Algerian consular official in relation to the alleged kidnapping of an Algerian opposition influencer. Only last week did French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot say that relations between the two countries were returning to normal, but the opposite has turned out to be true, with, in the words of France's Le Monde newspaper, the crisis between Paris and Algiers reaching an unprecedented level of severity, and the Franco-Algerian relationship at its most damaged since Algeria won its independence from France in 1962. While the past few days have been particularly dramatic, with the mutual expulsion of 24 diplomatic and consular officials, the recent deterioration in relations really started last summer, when the French government U-turned on its policy towards Western Sahara by endorsing the Moroccan proposed autonomy plan for the disputed territory, which is also claimed by the Polisario Front, a pro-independence group that receives support from Algeria. Later in November, relations took a further hit when Algerian authorities arrested a French-Algerian writer, 80-year-old Boualem Sonsel, an outspoken critic of the government, who has since been sentenced to 5 years in prison. On top of this, Algeria's refusal to accept a number of nationals deported from France has further inflamed tensions, while Algeria has accused France of undermining diplomatic agreements between the two countries. Amid the escalating feud, French President Emmanuel Macron last month seemingly urged his ministers to tone down the rhetoric, stating the need to engage in a rigorous and respectful dialogue, and earlier this month, he sought to diffuse the tensions in a phone call with Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune. However, this attempt at diffusal has evidently not succeeded, with President Macron's office issuing a statement saying that Algerian authorities were responsible for the brutal deterioration in bilateral relations. In its own statement, the Algerian Foreign Ministry pointed to the constant, negative and distressing attitude of France's right-wing Interior Minister Bruno Retailleau, who has taken a hard line on Algeria. Where things go from here remains to be seen. The relationship between France and Algeria, which has long been tumultuous, is an important one, covering security, immigration, the climate and trade. You're listening to TLDR's Daily Briefing. If you want more explainers on what's happening in the world, then you should check out TLDR's other channels. Today, we released videos on Germany's new coalition, the Liberal Democrats' comeback, as well as a new episode of our World Leader Leaderboard podcast. You can find those videos linked in the description or show notes for this episode, or by searching for TLDR on YouTube or Nebula. In Israel, amidst a backdrop of political turmoil and ongoing military operations, calls for negotiations are intensifying as mediators seek to broker a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Meanwhile, a growing number of Israeli soldiers, reservists, and former military leaders are urging Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to negotiate with Hamas to end the ongoing conflict and secure the release of hostages held in Gaza. Open letters, signed by over 1,000 military personnel, criticise Netanyahu's recent decision to abandon a ceasefire for renewed fighting, arguing that a deal could free 59 hostages, some of whom are alive. Recent polls indicate that around 70% of Israelis favour a deal with Hamas, even if it requires ending the 18-month war. China has posted unexpectedly strong economic growth in the first 3 months of 2025, before the full force of US President Donald Trump's tariffs took effect. Growth in China's GDP hit 5.4% in the first quarter, exceeding both Beijing's full-year target for 2025 as well as the 5.1% forecast by economic analysts in a Reuters poll. But economists expect China's economy to come under pressure as the full US levies take force, on top of the economic problems it's faced for years, including a crisis in the property sector, the spectre of falling prices, and a reluctance among consumers to spend. Meanwhile, Trump yesterday ordered a probe into potential new tariffs on all US critical minerals imports, which again will escalate the US's trade war with China and put even more pressure on Beijing. In a landmark ruling, and after nearly a decade of investigations, Ollanta Humala, Peru's former president who was in office between 2011 and 2016, has been sentenced to 15 years in prison after being found guilty of money laundering related to illegal campaign financing. A Lima court concluded that Humala accepted funds from a Brazilian construction giant, Odebrecht, during his 2006 and 2011 election campaigns. In 2015, it was uncovered that Odebrecht had paid $8 million in bribes across 3 continents, one of Latin America's largest corruption scandals. The former president's wife, Nadine Heredia, co-founder of the Nationalist Party, received the same sentence but was granted asylum in Brazil, allowing her safe passage there with their son. And finally, a group of Serbian students who embarked on a 13-day, 1,400-kilometer bicycle journey from Serbia arrived in Strasbourg yesterday, calling on European institutions to break their silence over months of anti-government protests in Serbia and to take a stand on alleged corruption and democratic backsliding. More than 100 supporters, including members of the Serbian diaspora from Switzerland, France, and Germany, gathered to welcome the cyclists. That's all for today. We'll be back with you tomorrow, so make sure you're subscribed wherever you listen. In the meantime, you can check out the latest episode of our podcast, The World Leader Leaderboard, where we discuss which heads of government are doing well and who's doing badly every week. You can find the link in the podcast description. This was a TLDR news production hosted by Georgina Findlay, written by Rory Taylor and Nadja Lovadinov, and produced by Scarlett Watchorn. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back again tomorrow.